3:43 yesterday afternoon when a member of Houston's entourage located her body inside this hotel. So far, police and the coroner are refusing to offer details about what may have caused her tragic death.
She gave us the soundtrack to every heartbreak, wedding, and late-night drive. Whitney Houston's voice was legendary, unstoppable, unforgettable. But the story of her final hours? That's where things get complicated. February 11th, 2012, Suite 434 at the Beverly Hilton. Headlines said, "Accidental drowning," but the official coroner's report and a long-forgotten FBI file hint at a far stranger. Messier truth. Hidden evidence, mysterious visitors, and secrets no one talked about. What really happened behind those closed doors will make you see her final moments differently. The story we were told. Most of us remember exactly where we were when the news broke. Whitney Houston, just 48 years old, found unresponsive in a hotel bathtub in Beverly Hills. Within hours, every channel was running with the story, and it felt like the entire world froze in disbelief. The official report from the Los Angeles County coroner painted a clear but heartbreaking picture. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, with heart disease and substance use playing a part. On TV, we saw wall-to-wall coverage, tributes at the Grammy Awards, endless highlight reels of her most powerful performances, and fans around the world leaving flowers outside hotels and concert halls. It looked like a tragic, but sadly straightforward ending to a superstar's life that had always been under the spotlight. However, behind those headlines, there was another story most people didn't hear. Locked away in an FBI evidence box were reports, photographs, and personal items that raised more questions than answers. But why was the Bureau even interested in Whitney in the first place? Why the FBI was even there? She wasn't a criminal, she wasn't some kind of fugitive. But the truth is that her fame put her in situations where the Bureau had to get involved. Long before her passing, the FBI had already built up a 128-page file on her, and this wasn't about her substance use or her marriage drama that made tabloids. This was about extortion, obsessive fans, and real threats to her safety. Back in 1992, when Whitney was at the absolute height of her career after The Bodyguard and that record-breaking soundtrack, someone tried to blackmail her. According to documents later released through the Freedom of Information Act, an individual threatened to go public with what they described as intimate details of her private relationships unless she paid up. At first, the demand was $100,000, but then they raised it to $250,000. Whitney downplayed it when the FBI got involved, reportedly saying this person was a friend who would never hurt her. Still, the records show that her team eventually negotiated a confidentiality agreement, and although the exact amount wasn't revealed, money did change hands. And that wasn't the only time the FBI had to step in. They tracked down a fan who had written over 70 letters, some of them unsettling in tone, and another person who bizarrely claimed to be the President of Europe. So while agents weren't standing in the hallway of the Beverly Hilton on the day Whitney died, they had already spent years documenting the dangers circling her life. And those threats and secrets turn out to be the setup for what investigators would later uncover inside her hotel room. First discovery: the substance kit in the bathroom. When investigators stepped into Whitney's Beverly Hills hotel room, one of the first places they looked was the bathroom, and that space alone told them a lot. According to the official police and coroner reports, the countertop wasn't just cluttered with makeup or hotel toiletries. It had some very clear signs of substance use. Detectives logged a small spoon with a white, crystal-like substance stuck to it, and next to that was a neatly rolled piece of white paper. That wasn't all, though. Inside one of the bathroom drawers, they noted more powdery remnants, and even a portable mirror on a base had traces of the same substance. The lab tests later confirmed what many already suspected. It was substance, and it was present throughout her system at the time of her death. But the details go a little deeper. The coroner also wrote about the physical damage they found. Whitney had a hole in her nasal septum, which is something doctors often see in people who have used substance heavily over long periods of time. That kind of detail suggested this wasn't just a one-off situation, and it also pointed to the likelihood that Whitney had been using very recently, maybe even right before she slipped into the bath. And as the detectives continued combing through the room, they found more pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite add up to the image of a simple evening alone. Second discovery: the champagne that no one drank. When investigators checked out the rest of Whitney's suite, one of the first things that caught their attention was the room service cart, and it really told a story of a night that never actually happened. On the cart, there was a hamburger with fries, a turkey sandwich, and, most noticeably, a bottle of champagne that had been opened, along with a few other alcoholic beverages. Everything looked like it had been set up for a celebration, or at the very least a relaxed evening before heading out to the big pre-Grammy party hosted by Clive Davis. But then the toxicology report came back, and here's the detail that doesn't quite fit. Whitney's blood alcohol level was 0.0. She hadn't taken a single sip of alcohol, which immediately makes you wonder, who was the party really for? Who were those drinks meant for? According to reports, only 2 keycards had been used to get into Suite 434 that night, Whitney's and her assistant's. That means nobody else should have had access, at least officially. So the presence of champagne and other untouched drinks raises a quiet but unsettling question. Was someone else in the room earlier, or was it just a setup that never got used? It's small details like this that make you pause and realize there's more to the story than just what the headlines told us. Yet, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because right after that, investigators found something even stranger that had people talking. Third discovery: the mysterious man in the hoodie. Even though the coroner's report and the FBI files give us the official facts, there are parts of that day that still feel like a puzzle, and one of the most persistent stories involves a mysterious man. According to some hotel staff and a few other sources who spoke quietly after the fact, a tall figure wearing a gray hoodie was seen leaving the 4th floor through a service exit, or maybe a stairwell, avoiding the main lobby cameras entirely. Nobody got a clear look at his face, and Beverly Hills police never officially confirmed the sightings, nor did they ever name a person of interest. Private investigators and people familiar with the case have speculated a lot about who he might have been. Some think he could have been a courier, maybe delivering something to the suite or picking something up, while others wonder if he was there to collect on a debt. The thing is, without any official confirmation, he remains more of a ghost in the timeline than an actual lead, and that ambiguity has kept people talking for years. It's one of those little details that makes you stop and wonder whether Whitney really was alone in those final hours, or if someone else was quietly coming and going while the cameras didn't notice. Fourth discovery: the pharmacy in her suite. When the media first covered Whitney's death, the headlines mainly focused on substances in general, but the reality investigators found in her suite was far more detailed and, honestly, pretty overwhelming. Police cataloged a total of 12 different prescription medications scattered across her room, and these weren't all from the same doctor. Reports suggest at least 4, maybe even 5 different physicians had written them. That immediately raises a red flag for what doctors call polypharmacy, which is basically when someone ends up with multiple overlapping prescriptions. And it can be really risky, especially when you mix them with other substances. The toxicology report later showed that Whitney had several of these medications in her system, including the allergy medicine Benadryl, the muscle relaxant Valium, and the painkiller Tylenol relaxant Flexeril, marijuana, and the anti-anxiety substance Xanax. The coroner noted that the levels of these substances were relatively low and weren't a direct cause of her death. But when you look at all the pills together, it paints a very different picture than the simple overdose story the headlines told. Instead, it suggests someone managing stress, pain, and anxiety in multiple ways, probably trying to stay on top of her demanding career and public life. Walking into that suite, it was easy to see how chaotic her prescription routine had become, almost like a small pharmacy set up right there in her room, with bottles from different doctors everywhere. It's a stark reminder that the pressures she faced weren't just about fame. They affected her health, her choices, and the environment she was living in every single day. Fifth discovery: the bathtub water temperature. This is one of the most disturbing details from the entire investigation. When paramedics arrived, the bathtub water was still 93.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Considering she may have been submerged for up to an hour, physicists and forensic experts concluded the water would have been dangerously, scaldingly hot when it was drawn, estimated to be as high as 150 degrees. The autopsy report supports this, noting patches of skin slippage from the hot water burns on several parts of her body. It's a horrifying detail. Friends and family have stated that Whitney had a deep-seated fear of drowning and disliked hot baths. The question isn't just why she was in the tub, but why she would have been in water so hot it was physically burning her skin. Experts suggest she may have been so incapacitated by the cardiac event and substance use that she was not conscious enough to feel the temperature or pull herself out. Sixth discovery: bruises in the wrong places. Apart from noting patches of skin slippage from the hot water burns on several parts of her body, investigators noted several cuts and abrasions on her left arm, hand, and shoulder, plus bruises on her shoulders and head. There was a noticeable abrasion on the left side of her forehead and another on the bridge of her nose, which immediately makes you pause when you think about how she ended up in the bathtub. The coroner officially ruled that there was no foul play, but the locations of these marks have sparked debate among fans, investigators, and private observers for years. Then there are the smaller, more specific injuries. One of her fingernails was torn, with skin underneath it still intact, which raises the question: was she trying to grip something in her last moments? Some people have even argued that the mark on her temple could resemble a thumbprint, rather than just a bump from hitting a fixture. None of this would hold up as proof in court, but it's enough to make you wonder about the final moments she lived. What's clear is that these bruises and abrasions were fresh, which means they likely happened right before she passed, adding another layer of mystery to an already complicated scene. Seventh discovery: the red binder. After Whitney's death, there was a lot of confusion and rumors swirling around on what really happened in Suite 434, and one detail that has stuck with fans and investigators alike is the story of a red binder. It's not mentioned anywhere in the official coroner's report, but it has become a kind of legend in the lore of that hotel room. According to the accounts that circulated, the binder was a deep crimson color, sitting on her nightstand, and filled with song lyrics, scribbled notes, and personal reflections. Some say that tucked inside was a handwritten line that read something like, "If anything happens to me, look in the safe behind the picture." The rumor goes that investigators supposedly tried to follow that instruction but came up empty. No safe, no picture, nothing at all to point them in the right direction. Of course, it's the kind of cinematic detail that almost seems too perfect, like something out of a movie, but whether it's completely true or just embellished over time, the fact that people keep talking about it says something. Whitney may have been leaving clues, or at least the world feels like a piece of her story is missing. The persistence of that red binder story reflects how much people sense that there was more going on in her life, something the official reports didn't capture, and it keeps the curiosity alive about what really went on in those last hours. Eighth discovery: questions of a cleaned-up scene. One of the biggest disconnects is the state of the room versus the state of her body. The coroner confirmed she had recently used substance and paraphernalia was on the counter. Yet, Beverly Hills police found no significant quantity of the actual substance in the room. This led to explosive speculation. Was the scene tampered with? In the chaotic minutes between when her body was found by her assistant and when law enforcement sealed the suite, did someone have the opportunity to remove evidence? Some reports even claimed her bedsheets were missing. Bobby Brown's sister, Leola, later went on television accusing Whitney's boyfriend, Ray J, of being a runner boy and questioning why he was seen hiding his face while leaving the hotel. Ray J's representatives vehemently denied the accusations, but the question hangs in the air. If she took an acute dose of substance right before her death, where did it go? Ninth discovery: the FBI's past and a collapsed probe. The most telling part of the FBI file isn't what it says about her death, but what it says about her life. The 1992 extortion investigation was predicated on silencing secrets about her relationships. Though the FBI ultimately closed the case, it established Whitney as a target for blackmail. Fast forward 20 years. While there's no official FBI summary linking her death to any ongoing case, her passing had an immediate chilling effect on anyone who might have been trying to pressure her. With Whitney gone, any secrets she held, and any leverage someone had over her, died with her. It doesn't prove homicide, but it certainly establishes a motive for someone to want the chaos surrounding her to simply end. 10th discovery: the missing hard drive. Another persistent, unconfirmed detail is about her personal laptop. According to multiple accounts, her laptop was found in the suite. However, the hard drive was allegedly gone. The SATA connector was supposedly scratched, as if the drive had been forcibly and hastily removed. Nobody steals just a hard drive unless what's on it is more valuable than the computer itself. What could have been on it? Unreleased song demos? Private emails? Financial records? Or perhaps the kind of dirt that fueled the extortion attempt years earlier? Like the red binder and the man in the hoodie, the missing hard drive has become a legendary piece of the puzzle, a symbol of the information that vanished along with her. Stack the facts against the rumors. A spoon with substance residue, untouched champagne, a scalding hot bath, superficial bruises, and a history of being blackmailed. Add in the persistent questions: a possible stairwell ghost, a rumored cryptic note, a missing hard drive, and a potentially sanitized room. None of it lands squarely on simple accident. Yes, Whitney Houston drowned in a bathtub, and hits, substances, and heart disease were critical factors. But the evidence suggests she was swimming with sharks long before she slipped under the water. Why the public rarely heard any of this. A lot of the story about Whitney Houston's final hours never made it to the news, and there's a reason for that. The Beverly Hills Police Department was under intense media pressure and probably just wanted to close the case without the circus. And while the coroner did release findings, the more complicated and messy details were buried deep in the full 42-page report, not in the short press release. The FBI file about past threats existed, but it was old, heavily redacted, and didn't make for easy headlines. And of course, the family wanted to protect Whitney's dignity, which is completely understandable. There's only so much anyone should have to explain when someone you love passes. Her family never pointed fingers directly, but their words carry a lot of weight. Cissy Houston, in her memoir, wrote about Whitney's fears and how she sometimes felt surrounded by people who didn't have her best interests at heart. Her sister-in-law and manager, Pat Houston, has talked about the pressures Whitney faced and trusting God's timing to reveal the truth. Even the estate quietly settled a lawsuit about a canceled concert, citing third-party interference, and the details were sealed, which left the conversation officially over. When we think of Whitney, we picture her on stage, hitting that impossibly high note in I Will Always Love You. But knowing what investigators actually found, like a substance spoon in the bathroom, prescription medications from multiple doctors, and scalding hot water in the tub, paints a much more complicated picture. It's a story about how fame can sparkle like champagne on the outside, but swallow you up quietly like quicksand on the inside. Seeing the whole story, the bright talent and the struggles behind it, doesn't make her star any dimmer. It makes her human. And even now, some questions linger. Who were all the doctors prescribing her medication? Who cleaned up the substance before the police could document it? Was there really a man in a hoodie? And if so, who was he? If any of these details made you question the story you were told, share with us in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a like and stick around by subscribing for more stories like this.